The market is coming into a very key inflection point here as we close out the week. So in today's video, I want to provide an update on my general outlook on the market, along with a couple of potential trade setups that could be some really good swing opportunities for these next couple of weeks. Let's get right into it, and let's start off with the NASDAQ chart here. So just a more general outlook on the tech sector, and we can see here that we've got this swing low sitting at an exact low of 686.37 here on the QQQ. And I'm watching this on the weekly close here coming up tomorrow, because if we can close above this level, then that would provide pretty good indication that the bottom is likely in on stocks here or on the NASDAQ, because generally, if you break down from a key swing low and then the market retests it and closes back above, then it's usually just going to go towards the highs again and to new all-time highs. The market usually doesn't provide a nice retest if it's actually going to break down. So as we can see here, we had this previous swing low right here. And when we broke down, okay, we broke down right here. And then when we rallied back up into it, everybody's expecting for us to just like reject from here, go lower, but we close above and then we just blast off to new highs. If we take a look at another scenario here, we had this swing low right here. This was like the tariff dump last year. So we had this swing low, we broke below it, and notice how we didn't give anybody a nice perfect retest here. There was no retest where we came back into this level after we closed the weekly below. We sold off, and then as soon as we got back above this low right here, we just went to new highs again. So the fact that we're already retesting this low here on the NASDAQ gives me better confidence that the low is likely in, or we might stab down one more time to take out the liquidity at this low here. This weekly close here should have been the breakdown. Okay, this should have been the breakdown on the weekly close below this low. We should have seen a follow through to the downside, and which we did a little bit, but the fact we're wicking like this and we could potentially close back above this low here gives me a lot more confidence that we could be seeing a macro low here on the QQQ. And then not only is this the weekly close here, but it also coincides with it being the monthly close as well. So if we were to close above 686.37 here on the weekly and on the monthly, if we just go over to the monthly here, so if we got a close above this level on the monthly as well, then that would look even better for the longer term outlook on the NASDAQ. And then if we take a look at a couple of specific stocks here, the first one I'm eyeing up and that is looking to close quite bullishly on the weekly is IREN. So this one has a really interesting setup for a couple of different reasons. I like this one because we've been in a range here for the better part of almost a year. Like it was back in October of 2025 to where, or I guess November of 2025 where we made the high, and we're coming into like July and August now. So we've been consolidating in a range for a very long time, and we have this really nice 3 drive setup here to the downside. So we have one low right here, another drive at the low right here, and then another one that we just had this week right here. So if we can get a close back above this low, so the first initial low here at like 33.52, if the weekly closes above there and if like the monthly closes above there, then IREN has a very nice setup here, a nice swing setup to where we could be looking at the low of being put in this week. There was just so much fear on this candle here on this low that gives me even more confidence this is potentially a good bottom, and it provides you with a nice setup here. You've got your risk to reward, because if price does close back below this low, then you're out of the trade. So you know where your risk is defined, which is why I really like this setup as well. And if we were to get an entry at around, like, let's just say, even if price ends up pumping a little bit tomorrow and you close at like 40 and you have to enter here, you're still getting like a 2.5, potentially like a 3R trade out of IREN, depending on exactly where it closes tomorrow, where it closes the weekly out. And you would be looking for just a swing back up to the highs here. So we're in a range. If we take one side of the range to the downside, then your target is to take the opposite side of the range there. So your target would be this high for this trade, up to around the exact high here is at 70.71. So I'm watching this weekly close on IREN here pretty closely, and as long as we don't full retrace this move, if we were to get some sort of nasty dump on the 31st here and we ended up closing the weekly back below this low here at like 33.52, then I wouldn't enter the trade. But unless something catastrophic happens, I don't think that's going to occur, and this is looking like a really good trade setup here on the higher time frames for IREN. The next specific stock I'm looking at here on the weekly time frame is T1 Energy, or TE is the ticker, and this one had a nice sweep of its recent low here on the weekly at 3.74, and we're currently above that low. So if we can close the weekly above 3.74, then this one does have the potential to set up for a nice swing trade here. So let's just say, like, if you got an entry right here and your stop goes at the low there, then you'd be targeting back up to the highs. So this one provides you with a really nice risk to reward, like a 7R trade here. If we can get a close around here on T1 Energy, of course, it's going to depend where this weekly closes. So if it closes a little bit higher, then you could only be looking at like, you know, a 4R trade. If it closes a bit lower, you could even get a better risk to reward out of it. So I like this setup as well, mainly because we've ran this low. Okay, we've taken out the liquidity from this low here, and if we do get a close back above, then this sets up for a nice swing back up to the top side of this range. The next chart I'm looking at here is CRWV, or CRWV, and this one has a really nice sweep on the weekly. So we swept out all of this liquidity down here on the weekly. We almost tapped into this gap here down at like 57.02, but most importantly, we swept out both of these lows. Anybody who had stop losses on CRWV is now out of their trade. They've been stopped out, and we've gotten a nice close so far back above both of these lows. So if we're closing the weekly above 67.27 on CRWV, then this would set you up for a trade setup here. So you'd be looking to long wherever it closes above here. Let's just say it even has a more bullish day tomorrow and closes up above here at about like 77, then your entry would go there, your stop at the low, and then you would be targeting a move up to the highs at least. But with this kind of setup here, we've now taken these lows or we've now had a drive at the lows like twice. So we made a low right here, came back down, made another low here, and now we've tested this low for a third time. So if the market cannot push lower from this level, you know, it's had 2 attempts to push lower now, and if it closes back above here, it's not able to push lower, then that gives me a lot of confidence that we're probably going to at least see a move back up to the highs here. So depending on where this closes, it should be at least like a 3R trade, unless we see like a monster pump tomorrow, then it could end up only being like a 2R trade, but it could be a 5R, you know, down to a 2R trade depending on where it closes. But I just really like this setup here based on the fact that we ran out these lows, and if we can get this close on the weekly and on the monthly, then it sets up for a really good swing trade. And then for the fourth and final chart that we'll take a look at in this video, we've got Micron, or MU. So this one, I like it for a couple different reasons. First of all, we ran this gap here on the weekly chart. So we had a gap here down at about 783. We wicked into it on this weekly so far, and now we're getting a really bullish hammer candle forming on the weekly. If we can close above, the line in the sand for me is 859.69. Let me just be exact here if we zoom in. So basically last week's low here, this wick low at about 859 here. I want to see price close back above there on the weekly, and it'll be the monthly close as well. Mainly because if we were bearish on Micron, you should have expected price to reject from this level when we came back into it. The fact that we're getting back above this level here is really key, and it's a reason to why I'm actually more bullish on Micron here than I am on SanDisk. SanDisk kind of has the setup to where so far we are rallying back into this recent week's low here, but we're not above currently, so we're below right here. We're up a little bit after hours, but we're not back above this previous week's low, whereas with Micron, we are right now. So I do like the setup on Micron a little bit more for that reason. And then also because we're above this low right here too. We're above the June 8th or week of June 8th low. We're just reclaiming a ton of lows here on Micron. And if price were to be bearish, or if the chart were bearish, then I just don't think we should be reclaiming all of these lows. Most ideally, like if we were to reclaim this low here as well, week of July 6th, we're getting back above like so many different lows here to where if price were to go lower, if we were to close above, especially this like 893 level here, or the exact low is 891.66. But if we were to close back above there, then that would look extremely bullish. I would just like to see it close at least above last week's low though. That would provide a nice setup for me on the weekly time frame for Micron. Your stop would go below the low here because with all of like the fear that occurred this week, I just don't think we should be back below this low here if we're bullish. So that's where your stop would go. You know, you adjust your risk accordingly and you'd be looking for a move back up to the highs here. So this one would provide you with like around a 2.8 R if price did close here and this was your entry. So that is going to be all for this video. That's my general outlook on the market, along with 4 specific stocks that I think have some of the best swing trade setups on the weekly time frame. You've got really nice invalidation on a lot of these setups here. I think my favorite are definitely IREN and CRWV, just because of the drives to the lows that they've had here on their weekly time frames. They both look pretty similar chart wise on the weekly, but the drives at the lows here, the potential bullish weekly close, and then you've also got a very clear invalidation. If we're closing below the lows there, then I just think we're going much lower from here. So you've got your invalidation and you've got some really nice swing potential to the upside here as well. So that's going to be all for this one. If you guys did enjoy and would like to see more content like this in the future, then definitely subscribe. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.